Thank you all for coming here today, and welcome to the fantastic 23rd edition of the Busan Film Festival. I am very proud to be here with you today, standing amongst some of the other great inventive people who use Unity. How many people here know how to use Unity? Oh, so a good amount. Good. That's exciting. Thank you. One of the things that our CEO has said lately is that we believe the world is a better place with more creators in it. We like the fact that people have original ideas, that they think of things, that they can envision things, and sometimes people prototype ideas in Unity, and sometimes they build applications and very complex situations, immersive environments, or even something like autonomous vehicles. We're very lucky that Unity is one of the most widely used real-time 3D development platforms in the world. We have very simple principles. They are to democratize development, to help anyone and everyone make their ideas come to life. We like to help solve hard problems with our creators. And then we like to enable success. So our best opportunity as a platform development tool is to be able to help people make their ideas come to reality. Unity is a very large, stretching platform. We have grown very large in the last few years. 3 billion people and 3 billion devices get Unity applications running on them over the last couple of years. 29 billion installations of experiences and applications have been installed over the last 12 months. When we consider this, we have 192 countries have Unity developers in them. So that's every place in the world but 3 countries. We're trying to find those people now. That means 2 million active students are learning Unity every 12 months. Now, what does that mean? That means that 45% of all the top 1,000 mobile games out there are made with Unity, that 50% of all the new mobile games are made with Unity, and that 60% of all the AR and VR content is powered by Unity. So if we can keep doing that, we're going to continue to grow successfully. Now, as a market leadership, as you can see, we are very accessible to creators, to companies, and to people that want to learn. That puts us as one of the most innovative companies in the sectors that were taken into account by Fast Company, a organization that rated us as number 18 on the most innovative company list. What do we do with all of this attention? What do we do with all these ideas and these tools? The best thing we could possibly hope is that people out there try to strive to create and build things to the extent of their imagination or their know-how. We recently won an engineering or a Emmy for our contribution to the entertainment industry. We worked with Disney Television to create 3 shorts called Baymax Dreams. We have 30 offices around the world in 15 different countries. One of the greatest offices we have is here in Korea, and we're very lucky to have the support of some really fine, smart people that work at that office. Now, what does this mean? Do we have any students here today? Some students. But this means if you know Unity, it's very likely you can get a job. And as simple as that may sound, LinkedIn had the top 10 emerging jobs listed in their latest report. And Unity developer was the only name or the only job that linked a company with a job requirement. So when we talk about media and how Unity is changing the face of media, we realize that because of mobile devices and other means of entertainment, we're changing with the company. We're helping people use our platform to create media that is on the edge or is advancing with the way consumers are changing their habits of watching media. So that means the demand is changing, the technology is advancing, and we as creators have to embrace new opportunities and also create opportunities for our other media to grow or our other ideas to grow and adapt to the ever-changing environments. Do we have any filmmakers in the crowd? So when you think about telling your story, you have your original IP or your original idea. With Unity, we help future-proof your content or your idea. So what that means is taking that concept or that idea of your movie or your story and adapting that and adding it to VR, AR. You can take that character or that story you have, and with Unity, the content then flows easily into game devices or advertisements or even new platforms that have yet to be perceived. If we take a look at Disney, for example, they are embracing real-time production, not only on the Baymax Dreams that we helped create with Disney, but also when we start looking at the way that they were using Unity back for the Jungle Book. The team that created the Jungle Book used real-time visualization and built upon the real-time engine so that the director could see the computer graphic output before they started rendering. So they saw this in real time. That allowed people to make decisions up front. I call it front loading, or putting 80% of the hard decisions up front. And therefore, we're not following the old production pipeline that we used to have, where we have this process of pre-production, where we spend a lot of time thinking about the story and drawing lots of pictures and creating animatics, then having it, what they call a cascading or a waterfall process by handing off each task onto another. This was an expensive way, and quite often by the time you got to your final image or the animation, or you had captured all the data that you would hope be putting into your digital concept, it was a little rigid. It was hard to go back. It was hard to change something before. And also, each one of the creative people in the different section were isolated in their own discipline. So if someone was working on lighting or compositing or rendering on the back end of the production, they had to make do with what was already done before them, because it's hard to stop that train when it's chugging along and you have a due date at the end. So the next slide is a visualization. It's not a literal sense of what this new process is like, but it is an idea. It is a concept where we're creating a momentum, and that all those harder, more difficult decisions are made up front as you're collaborating with the different aspects of the production pipeline. And what real time means is that your project is working, you're refining your story, but your look development and your lighting and your camera can start helping you tell the story in a very dramatic or explorative manner. So as you start to develop your process, as you start to envision what your story is going to be like, you know where the camera is going to be pointing because you've already broken down that sequence. You know what to dress and what not to dress in your set because you know where the camera is pointing, and you know that the depth of field is going to be at such a distance that I know behind him, the character, is not going to be in focus. Or, as you saw in the movie that we put on before, The Heretic, we could create the different tableaus or the different ideas that would help tell our story more dramatically. We can pick those camera angles and do the animation of the visual effects so that they're most impactful. As we go around this spiral then, we're refining the ideas. We're bringing the ideas to a finer point and adding details where we need to help deliver that story very strongly. So when we take a look at this little test, this was an idea about working with our high-definition render pipeline. And how good could we get this to look? So this was a little test, which is now a production that's underway called Wind Up. Again, just how nice of an environment or an animation quality could we deliver in real time? You can see the nice soft shadows, the light as it's dappling off of the leaves. We also wanted to experiment with this idea of a wool cardigan or a sweater and cable knit, these complex shaders, and how easy was it to achieve. So when we look at this and we move around the sequence in this little video here, you can see in real time we can make those decisions that help us deliver. Changing the materials and the assets, being able to change the light of day, being able to adjust a little rim light on this character in order to be able to refine that process. And perhaps with the shadow, the illumination in the hair or the fabric details might not show quite strongly, so we can adjust those globally, and they don't just affect that one character in the shot, but it affects that object all the way through, because in real time that means the textures we design don't have to be re-rendered. This next sequence is from a series of shorts that we created with Neil Blomkamp.
Adam is the story of a robot character who has a human brain, who has been imprisoned in a robotic shell.
This was our first
from the society
realization that
the rest of his body
procedurally based
into this
lighting or physically based lighting would be able to work inside of a real-time render engine. Again, experimenting with new render algorithms and lighting scenarios, we can see we can deliver a really realistic lighting condition and how the light affects the shaders and works on the materials.
And, it also brought with it not just the creative world exploring part of developing Adam, it also brought a whole bunch of unique technological elements that we would be incorporating into the way that we made it. And the reason that I was excited to work with Unity is primarily because I have just been obsessed with real-time graphics since I was 16. I love the idea of environments that you can explore at 60 frames per second, real-time simulation, real-time lighting. Unity is what real-time future virtual cinema is.
The first Adam that came out kind of knocked people's socks off. I think people were pretty shocked by it. It kind of came out of nowhere. Visually, it looked fantastic, super intriguing, massive cliffhanger. People were like, well, what is this story?
The thematic backbone of it is a discussion about where your soul is, what defines you. Is it the fact that you are physically a human? If your brain exists in a vat, are you still a human? If your brain were in a vat, do you think that you're a human?
I love working with Neil. You know, I've worked with him for years now. I think our brains work at some level on a similar wavelength, so we kind of get each other. So there's a lot of shorthand between us in terms of artistically where he wants to take things.
I love that head down, but still forward. Yeah, in that zone, we're cool. Yeah, somehow that other side felt better than this one, man.
The environment at the studio here is ridiculously creative. It's not just a place for Neil to be creative, it's a place for all of the artists to be creative, and something special comes out of that.
Okay. This is one of the
projects
shorts that we
under
made with
wraps
Disney
right now.
on Baymax.
There's a lot of people who are interested in what we're doing, and this could be a big game changer, so we want to make sure that when we reveal it at the right time.
Disney and Unity Technologies have joined forces to prove that you can make TV animation with our creation engine.
We're using techniques that we've adopted from virtual reality production and from augmented reality production, and utilizing a real-time rendering system to create broadcast content.
We are making 3 short films based on the Big Hero 6 property. We're telling the story of Baymax as he falls asleep and goes into a dream state.
Getting to see what would Baymax dream is something we wouldn't do in the series probably, and this approach really feels like it's taking Baymax to some new place.
It's exciting to see this new technology being used to tell a new kind of story.
The wonderful thing about real-time content creation is that it allows for multiple parallel workflows to happen simultaneously.
The director can look at everything at the same time instead of waiting for each department to hand off to the next one.
Okay. So we're very lucky to work with some of these great studios, and create further storylines. Baobab Studio created The Crow as a VR 360 film and also as a 2D animated film. The 2D film went into animation festivals under that one segment, or that one or that one category, and then the 360 film also went into the 360-degree interactive storytelling section. So this whole concept that, you know, we're at that point in time where we know people are adopting real time, creates that idea that, you know, it's taking that leap from filmmaking and creating the contrast of the idea of a printing press to the leap that word processing came to. So there's a huge gap, and a lot of those changes were very powerful once people started working in real time. As well, when we look at the previous process, sometimes it took 90 hours to render one single frame of animation. In real time, we can see these decisions very quickly, and the concept or the idea of dailies becomes a lot more rapid, iterative process. So editorial can see decisions that are being made a lot more quickly. So we have this concept, we just say no to render farms. I'd worked at Digital Domain, and we had worked on some of the Transformers movies in the past, and at 90 frames a second, you know, or at 90 hours of render time times 24 frames per second, there were huge amounts of information that were rendered, especially because some of these comps had 54 to 60 different layers that needed to be rendered per frame as well. I like this. It's a kind of a jokey matter where Michael Bay is the destroyer of render farms. So this concept of power and versatility allows you to tell your story in a much more rapid manner. So let's talk a little bit about what Unity is doing in the near future and follow through on that roadmap. We've made a massive commitment to the media and entertainment industry, not only through games and interactive media, but also because we realize that the tools that have been developed in the past were primarily for game development. So what do we have to do to change that up? We really have to look at what our goal is, or what our vision is, and the concept of bringing real time to all the creators of the CG community that used to work in the offline world. How do we make Unity a hybrid platform for linear and interactive storytelling? The concept is therefore taking and dividing it into sections that we can all understand. We have animated films, we have virtual effects, or visual effects and virtual production, location-based entertainment, amusement parks, rides, interactivity as you're going through these theme parks, advertising. Advertising is changing. The way that we interact with products now is changing. And then broadcast. Broadcast is creating a link between all the other 4 areas, and we're seeing these different medias overlap and interact. So we have this concept of a development axis. On one side, we have where rendering and animation tend to rise more steeply. Along the other axis, we have real time, and that a lot of that has to do with where do we get the content that we're creating. So as we follow these along, we realized that the lowest threshold there was AA animation, or the animation that you see on television every day, morning television, and now you're capable of binge watching this on streaming media. We figured out very quickly that that lends itself to real-time virtual production, so that the same content that you may be creating for that kids' animation show therefore translates over into games and interactive activities. Then we start looking at AAA animation. We look at the content. If we take, for example, The Heretic is a very high quality or high bar of animation, akin to what you might see on the streaming media content on Netflix or Amazon these days. Broadcast again starts to sweep up. The interactivity between real people and virtual sets is somewhere where we're striving to go very quickly. We find that there's still a demand for human interaction and people that want to help tell stories through visualization and statistics. As we start to look at the more complex aspects of visual effects and film production, we see that aspect of real-time capture and interactivity with live action characters become very dependent on external technologies. Like last night at the party, we gave away a perception neuron suit. Those inertia-based trackers have become more familiar and very accessible in the past where they were not. So we look at this 6 pillars of development. We've been working very hard on infrastructure, or what it takes to allow people to scale or create a lot of graphics with larger teams. The pipeline integration, how we embrace other tools. And performance capture, as I just mentioned. High quality graphics. Again, allowing people to create animation, still using the skill sets that they have been fostered, nurturing, and developing over the years. Some studios pride themselves in very dramatic and very capable animation teams. So being able to work with those teams with Unity is a really big advantage to where we're going. Also, video, being able to get video in and out of the real-time engine. And that's a very challenging aspect where we talk about high-resolution video and high-performance camera systems. So the success means that we've got to be able to scale. We've got to be able to produce a lot more information and a lot more mass development of ideas and content. So we're doing that by creating that infrastructure that is supported inside of the studios. Has anyone seen the Sherman short that we've done so far? If not, we're going to be showing that a little later in the booth. You'll have to swing by and see it. We're doing some really incredible stuff with shaders and graphics and real-time fur. So virtual production integrated into the pipelines. Virtual production has been used on, as we had seen, the Jungle Book. Our system was used on Ready Player One, also with MPC on the new Lion King film that's coming out. And we also worked on Blade Runner 2049. So utilizing virtual production, we can then capture data from the exterior world and the interaction of filmmakers with cameras or physical devices. So just talking a little bit about what that roadmap looks like for the long-term strategy and the packages here. One thing that we've been doing is creating something called the package manager. And the package manager allows us to make updates or release parts of software without having to do full iterative releases of the software. So at Unity, we do 4 releases every year. We start the year with a 2019, and this year, obviously, .1, and then we work our way through the releases .2 and .3, whereas .4 will be a reverse compatible or a compliant release, so that the software that comes out at the end of the year will make sure works with the next release coming out in 2020. The package manager itself is a very efficient means, and that way if we find any bugs, we're not putting out a whole point release or fix. We can only fix the little package, and that can be pushed to you and updated, which means you don't have to roll back or forward a whole point release in order to have access to tools that work a little bit more functionally. As well, we have the asset store, which is building all the time as well. There are 4 million aspects on or assets on the package store, so that between physical props that have been modeled, or animated characters, rigs, scripts, or little pieces of tools that you can download to help expedite your production. Again, we have the Unity Hub, and the Unity Hub is a way to manage your projects or your scenes as they're in production. That's a new UI framework and a capacity for you to help streamline loading, especially if you're working over multiple characters. Which version of Unity works with the projects that you're working with at that time? We also have something called Unity Learn, and this is a really fantastic way to access data, content, assets, and whole scene files to help you understand or be able to take those scene files and reverse engineer solutions and looks and feels for the way that you want to create your assets. We've done a lot of work on licensing. If anyone has ever worked at a large studio, one of the biggest challenges is working behind a firewall. In the past, Unity had to check your license system against the internet. Now we've created a license server structure that allows you to work both in Linux and Ubuntu, Windows, and Macintosh. And working behind a closed or air-gapped network means that studios can now adopt Unity in the core of their pipeline. So let's talk about that pipeline for a minute. We've got Maya, Max, Blender, Houdini, Motion Builder. All these pieces of software are what we call the DCC tools, or digital content creation tools. We create something called a round trip, and that means that you can work in your DCC tool and in Unity at the same time. This means that that round trip, or that ability to work something in Unity, go back to your DCC tools, then go back to Unity, gives you a very fluid momentum. MeshSync is a piece of software that allows you to connect those DCC tools to Unity, so working at the same time, you can see the results in real time. Then after you've made your decisions and seen your final views in Unity, you can then go out to our recorder and export final frames, or you can execute or create an executable, which means you can have a playable scene. I'm going to give you a little demonstration of that in a couple of minutes. Again, working in DCC round tripping means that you've got to plug in Unity exports, your mesh, your material, your shaders, your camera animation, custom attributes, lights, and they go back and forth really seamlessly. This is the roadmap going through 2019.1, which is out now. 2019.2 is coming out very shortly. And then 2019.3 is going to give us even more opportunity to go back and forth. As you can see up in the corner here, we've got on the right Maya, and you can see the shaders and the tune shader and the animation that's happening on the left. Alembic is one aspect of the DCC round tripping, which is very powerful. Alembic creates a streaming data format which allows us to create simulations and animation. We used Alembic quite a lot in the Heretic for the face, for the clothing, to get a natural and fluid motion from the original animation that was done in Maya. Now, USD is also a powerful format. USD allows us to be able to work in larger teams and in different disciplines. This means that other pieces of software and their file formats can combine into what is called the universal scene description. So USD is like a wrapper. It's a file format that allows other pieces of software to contribute and build upon a scene. This means if I'm going to start working in Unity, I can start blocking out in Mesh Builder, or in Pro Builder, creating my rough meshes. And then I can start adding other pieces of software to my pipeline after I've roughed out my idea. UDIM is another file format. UDIM was created by Weta Digital. And in this example, we can see that they've created a whole horse with 8 16K textures. So again, very big, oh, that's not gonna play there. So very big realistic textures which are streaming onto this horse, which is being seen in an AR application. So large amounts of data coming into our virtual production process. Now, how many animators do we have in the crowd today? Not too many animators? Okay, I'll go a little bit quickly here, then we can get to some other stuff. We can use Unity to add very high detailed meshes and animation controls, giving us photorealistic animation possibilities. And when we're done with that, we can then export our content to the recorder, and we can export different frame rates. We can export different resolutions. One of the things in Baymax Dreams that we found was very helpful was the capacity to export 8K images. And then in post, we could reduce those images down to 4K. And it didn't take any longer to render an 8K image than it would a 4K image. It was just the time it took to transfer that data onto the disk that took more time per frame. We're also working on render passes, which means when we work with visual effects, we can combine layers or export layers and then work in real time to tweak those layers in a post-process after the fact. We're also realizing the tools and the technical directors that work in different visual and animation effects houses require a scripting language called Python. And they use Python to automate different processes or push information throughout the pipeline. So we've fully embraced that, and now we're working utilizing Python and its hooks into a very familiar asset management package from Autodesk called Python. And this shows you the workflow that we can achieve by using Python. Allows groups to collaborate and interact with each other. As you see here, we've got someone working on the rocks for the background scene of one of these sections from Adam, one of the Adam movies. So by being able to assign changes, mark up descriptions, and pass them back and forth, it creates a very collaborative momentum. You can work automatically, seamlessly between Unity and Shotgun. And therefore, people can work in their desks and pass things back and forth. and it creates a very fluid, rhythmic flow to your to-do list for the day. You get very accurate representation and approvals and constant feedback. Now, what this means for directors and producers is that they can measure how quickly things are moving along. They can identify where the decision-making processes may be having challenges or struggles, and they can work by helping people improve their productivity by being able to see how quickly things move through this pipeline. What this ultimately means is you're not waiting for days to get feedback from your supervisors or the editorial, that these pieces of the real-time render pipeline push information very quickly. Nothing feels better than at the end of your day having a few check marks beside your to-do list, especially if you're a creative person and you're waiting to have that feedback. So let's talk a little bit about world building. When you're designing sets, when you're talking about this creative process, when you're very interested in how to build environments, or perhaps you have visual references, we'll talk very specifically about some of the ideas that came about through the creation of Adam, episode 3. In this instance, as in The Heretic, we scanned environments. We took, in order to create the world of Adam 3, we took 4,500 pictures of the environment. And then we were capable of stitching all those pieces together. And then using a system called de-lighting, we could then take the shadows away from all of that information. What that means is when we take the physical world, we photograph it, we create computer graphic geometry from those photographs, all the different directions then stitch together to create the geometry. Then, by going into Unity, we can take the shadows away. Now, why would we want to take the shadows away? Well, say we want to change the position of the sun. So we take the shadows away, we take it into computer graphics, we relight the set with the CG lighting, and then we don't have contrasting shadows. We don't have one shadow falling this way and the other shadow falling the other way when we change the time of day from 8 a.m. to noon. We also have the ability to grab information like point cloud data using a LiDAR scanner or from doing photogrammetry, and then we can look at that data very quickly inside of Unity in real time. So very complex systems of point clouds can be imported. We can also volumetrically capture information. This means using sensors to be able to import that data in real time from something like a RealSense sensor. This is a $370 sensor, which can digitize somebody's face in real time. This used to be very expensive equipment. It would take huge light stages and other volumetric capture data to be able to capture somebody's facial performance. And now people are creating plugins that work with this data in real time. Continuing to talk about world building, part of our ideas with world building is to create a more extensible API. We can use BIM architectural technology. If you know you're going to be shooting a movie in a specific piece of architecture, and that architectural model exists, we can bring that into Unity. we can adjust that information really quickly, and you can look at it in VR or AR. Using ProBuilder, and this is a very basic polygonal modeling tool, which works very successfully for designing and building your rough ideas and your sets. And you can work right in Unity. And after that, you can take it into Polybrush, and Polybrush allows you to do terrain generation. Looking at some of the way that this works, our new terrain system allows you to sculpt or create polygonal and virtual environments just by being able to manipulate the brushes. How many programmers do we have in the room? One or two. I consider myself a little bit of a hybrid artist, meaning I know some technology, and then I know a lot more of the tools and graphics for creative. But what we're starting to do in Unity is giving the artist the ability to use visual scripting, being able to almost create sentences which read backwards into Unity as code. That makes artists a little bit more powerful because we don't have to wait for the programmers to do their stuff with the content that we're creating. We're also creating animation jobs or playables. This means that my animation of this scorpion can be played with a game controller. I can actually create animation and control my animated character and record that as an animation track and be able to put that into my movie or my experience or my immersive experience. Now, Mechanim is a retargeting technology that we have inside of Unity, and it allows us to take different animations and apply, or an animation performed by a human character, and allowed us to put that into different other shaped characters, as you see here. The same animation we capture will fit on all 4 of these different characters. Then we have something called runtime rigging, and this is available now. And this gives us the opportunity to tweak or manipulate characters with our Unity animation system so that our rigging systems can continue to develop and we can create better control for our characters. We have animation plugins in Unity, and these again are available in the asset store. We have an editorial or timeline sequencing software that's built in, and this allows you to treat clips of animation much the same as you would clips of video. So by being able to take an animated clip and put it onto a character in different areas, we can then trigger different events through timeline. It's a very productive way to work with audio and even a storyboard content, putting it onto timeline and being able to come up with a rough edit and then adapting your real-time content on top of that. And the timeline roadmap, as you can see, is getting more sophisticated as we go along. One of the big wins in the next little while is going to be utilizing OpenIO. Timeline IO means that the ability to go from Premiere or Final Cut Pro or Avid with the timeline you create in Unity or the timeline that you create in Avid or Final Cut works back and forth with the timeline in Unity. And Cinemachine, again, a very powerful tool, allows you to create a camera system which has a brain. They actually call it the Cinemachine brain. That means the procedural camera system can help you change the production workflow by assigning an intelligent camera into your scene. If anyone has ever tried to create a camera move and follow someone along a set, and they find maybe after they've shot that sequence that that person maybe is moving a little too slowly, well, you have 2 options. You either do another take, you increase the speed of the camera and hope the person walks at the same rate, or you can attach the camera to the person and track that person as they walk. Well, what if you cut in the middle of that walk cycle and you want to go somewhere else? Do you need heads or tails on the end of that shot? Do you need to be able to change the camera perspective? In Unity, you can do that instantaneously by assigning 2 or 3 different cameras to one shot, and then create priorities between those cameras to be able to make decisions very rapidly. Then you can sample those different camera shots. You can look at them on timeline and you can adjust them, and you never break your animation, and your character doesn't break the camera. So we've been working very hard on putting the physical requirements of cameras or the attributes of cameras into Unity. This means that what you see in the real world using specific camera settings can be replicated or simulated inside of Unity. That goes with sensor size and presets, focal lengths, the ISO settings, aperture, different aspects which give you a realistic look. To prove some of that, we did some rendering tests, and using our scriptable render pipeline, or SRP, we've then developed a couple of different layers or levels of rendering. The lightweight render pipeline is good for doing VR or some mobile gaming, and you get really great results, really beautiful imagery.
Where is the workflow when working with cameras inside of lightweight?
Okay, I think we're running out of time.
Each camera has 4 different render modes. So up here, we see render mode.
Oh, there's somebody else talking there too. So let's take a look at some of the effects that we can do with the lightweight render pipeline. As you take a look at this, these are pretty phenomenal games running on mobile devices. Again, this is a very effective means to create beautiful environments. And as you see, both the water, the refraction, the reflection, all these shaders are running on the lightweight render pipeline. If we take a look at the HDRP, which is the high definition render pipeline, which we used on that other shot that we saw, or that short that we saw earlier, there's VR support, there's reflection systems, there's new shaders that we've developed specifically for HDRP, and they continue to be developed. Some of the technical aspects here are listed, but we look at what the results are, and we can have extremely nice soft shadows. It's production ready. We can create look development using HDRP, which then can be extended and developed as looks that will go through the whole of our movie. This was one piece that we did, and this is a behind the scenes look at how we used HDRP in order to create a car commercial for BMW. We took a real car and then a computer graphics car, and we put the two of them beside each other and then asked people on the internet which ones do they think were real and which ones were created in Unity. The result of that survey was 50-50. So that means we were good enough to fool 50% of the people 50% of the time. So you can see how HDRP creates these photorealistic imageries. Different reflections, different refractions, the way that the light spills off of the curves of the paint. And in doing so, we create very complex shaders. This one specific one that you see on this Lexus advertisement here creates the very specular or flecks of paint inside of the car surface. One of the other aspects is volumetric lighting. Again, if we take a look at the lights that were in the Heretic, being able to see dust particles in the streams of light, being able to have these real-time soft shadows, in this demonstration from the lightsaber, and how the shadows get softer the further away from the light source. Again, the fur prototype that you saw in Sherman will be coming out and be available next year. Now, how do we get there? How, as artists, do we get these complex shaders? Again, designing tools that are visually interactive. We can look at this shader graph, which was created, Again, being able to design shaders by collecting words and nodes, inputting information and changing that information inside of a node, which has a whole bunch of code in behind it, means as a creative person, I don't need to write a single line of code. We also have our VFX editor, again, node-based, a lot like Houdini. Some people can, refer to it as a Houdini Lite. Houdini allows us to export alembics, and we can work in alembics inside of Unity, going back and forth with the node system in Houdini. But sometimes you just need more simple and quick real-time interaction. So that is where our VFX editor comes into play. We have a really great spaceship demo that we have on the booth if you want to take a look at it a little later. Again, astounding visual effects graphs. Really incredible motion vector and particle simulations. We also have a post-processing stack. And the post-processing stack gives us full color correction control. We can change different interactions between the image and the camera as the camera is perceiving the images in front of us. That means we can add a bloom or tone mapping using ACEs. We can have HDR color grading. We have depth of field, lens distortions. We can get the vignetting around the edges, emulating lenses, and the bokeh or blooms in the different lens, the light disturbance in the lens. Post-processing is an incredible way to add that extra layer of realism to your computer graphic images. Again, taking a look at that BMW commercial with the Series 8, really great opportunity to see the particular realism that can be achieved using HDRP. We have a lot of advancements in lighting. Lighting in computer graphics is starting to emulate real-world lighting, and the different ways that we're working with both environments and the specific physical-based materials in computer graphics gives us a lot of power. This may be familiar to some of you. We have some of the creators of Gloomy Eyes with us. In XR, or in mixed reality, we can then use different types of headsets, and you create it once in Unity, and it can go to multiple headsets as build targets. Again, looking at that ability to push the extent of your intellectual property to reach multiple devices. We take a quick little look. Some of those XR graphic advancements allow you to use Magic Leap, built upon what we call AR Foundation. And this is a combination of AR Kit and AR Core. So whether you're developing an experience that works on Android or iOS, you only have to create it once. And this little demonstration shows how some of that works. This is actually our cafeteria area at Unity, but you can see all of the amazing pieces of geometry and art that have been imported into Unity and built into this little XR demonstration. We also have something called Editor XR. And Editor XR is a virtual environment builder. Allows you to bring your assets into Unity and work with an HMD or an XR device in order to manipulate the content. And it's a full suite of tools which are very powerful and extremely fun. Now here we have a short bit, and we're going to talk about virtual production for performance and performance capture. We've been partnering with different companies. One is called MPC. MPC is a huge post-production and pre-production company for creating animation for films. They've done several films, including The Lion King, by utilizing Unity. In November of last year, we purchased a company called Digital Monarch Media. And Digital Monarch Media were the group that worked on The Jungle Book, Blade Runner 2049, and Ready Player One. Digital Monarch Media creates a very robust platform for being able to shoot films prior to actually hiring artists, animators, or even actors. Being able to shoot virtually is a great way to proceed or prototype your shoot. It allows you to do a pre-visualization or a technical visualization, and it's gotten to the point where I've started to call it production visualization. We can use different types of devices. I've got one here. And this is an XR application that runs on, this one is a Lenovo Tango. It's got very good depth sensing. And then on this, we've got a couple of Xbox controllers. So all these different devices interact with the content inside of Unity. We can also see our video I/O being able to input live video content into Unity and being able to manipulate that, streaming that video footage in and applying it to three-dimensional objects. Our game objects and animation clips recorder allows us, again, to be able to animate aspects either before the playables or as playables, and record these and layer them up inside of the scene to create more complex animation. This means one person can create a lot of different takes in a very short period of time. We've got our own video I/O, or the information to allow frame rates to be regulated at production or video production processing at frame accurate control. We've also, this is some of the work done in our Unity Japan team, and this is called Clinker. It's available on GitHub, as well as some of the other pieces you'll see here. This is being able to take motion capture from a Rococo suit, which is, again, one of those IMU-based systems that I talked about a little earlier, and you can see the real-time output. So we've got a virtual camera system tracking our action as if it were a real-time performance capture. Now, I'm out of time here, but I just wanted to say one last thing. As a summary, we look at Unity as a flexible, modern editor with a very robust feature set. We've got opportunities to operate your game and sustain your studio by being able to use different kinds of your IP in different production environments, whether it's video games, whether it's film animation, or even if you wanted to create toys. This kind of keeps people very productive. The feedback of real time gives people the opportunity to feel like every day they're creating more and more content. That creates a connectivity between the different people inside of your studio. You start wondering what the outcome is going to be when you have to hand your content off to other divisions or different parts of the pipeline. Whereas with Unity, you see those updates immediately. That allows you to maintain a higher level of quality, and that gives people a lot more of a happier outlook to their job. So we keep pushing the ideas, we keep bringing new concepts, working with artists and other creators to really lift up the interactivity of real time. It's a really fantastic opportunity. It's a different world than what we've been used to working in. And I think in the future, you will all be able to see the output that we've been working with in Unity, because I see it being the wave of the future and the means by which storytellers will be able to experiment, design better stories, and be more effective. Thank you very much. This is our QR code. And please, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. Okay. So if anyone wants to come to the booth after this, we can do a little demonstration of the virtual production system. We can have some questions. We can do whatever you need to do, and we'll be able to show you a couple more demos. Thank you very much.